Are you struggling with roadblocks as a woman in the challenging and constantly changing world of corporate America? If you feel stuck in your career, you may be holding yourself back and may not even realize it. Prepare to be enlightened by the meaningful discussions here at the No Woman Left Behind podcast. Each week, gather the insight you need to break down those walls of limiting beliefs. Unleash your full potential and unlock the leader within. Listen to raw conversations with corporate women as they share inspiring stories with the purpose of obtaining their dream career and living a truly fulfilling life. Here's your host, Rosie Zilinskas.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the No Woman Left Behind podcast show. I'm Rosie Zilinskas, your podcast host. Today, I have Clarissa Burt as my guest. Clarissa is an internationally acclaimed, award-winning media personality, producer, director, writer, author, public speaker. She's also a former supermodel and the winner of Celebrity Survivor Show. Clarissa is the founder and CEO of a company called In the Limelight Media. This is a multimedia platform consisting of TV, video, podcast, and a digital magazine. Her best-selling book entitled The Self-Esteem Regime was published in November of 21. The reason I invited Clarissa on is because she is a communications expert. She has so much expertise in the communications industry as a professional that she wrote this amazing book. And there's a bunch of different things that we're going to be talking about, but one of them is why we have a fear of failure. And she has an acronym that the phrase is, I want to live high, but we're not talking that kind of high. High is an acronym that she will explain during the episode. And she also wants you to know that you need to step into your place of power. So we're going to talk about all that. And she's also going to tell us a little bit about her book. So all of this is relevant to women in the corporate world because a lot of times we suffer from the imposter syndrome or lack of self-esteem. And Clarissa tells us a little bit about how to be able to shed some of those thoughts that are holding you back and be able to build your self-esteem up. So this conversation is going to be really, really important if you're struggling to step into the power of you, essentially, at work. So stay tuned for my conversation with Clarissa. Why, hello there, Clarissa. Very nice to see you on the podcast of the No Woman Left Behind. Clarissa, I'm just going to go straight in and ask you a question. So last time that we spoke, you talked about people having the fear of failure, and you have an acronym for that. I want to know what your acronym is for that.
Right. Well, failure is something that everybody, always, they kind of wells up in them frequently whenever whenever life kind of happens, right? Or we need to move forward or forge ahead. And those feelings of, am I going to be good enough? Am I going to make this happen? All of that fear kind of stuff starts coming up. And it's really, the only thing it is fear of failure. And, and I love when we had our conversation, you said, yeah, but what if you didn't fail, right? Which is obviously right, which is a really great way of looking at it. And I love when you said that. But the acronym really is your first attempt in learning, right? So I'm hard pressed to believe that the first car that came off the assembly line or the first, light bulb that, nothing comes out the first time perfectly. Sometimes it's a work in progress. It may take a little longer than we like. But the idea that you have failed means you're one step closer to success. And so I think you should really embrace failure because it's inevitable. So why not make it your friend as opposed to your foe and have it be, okay, I'm going to fail. I'm going to trip up. I'm not going to get it right the first time. That's what learn. Look, when we started to crawl and get off our bellies as kids, it took us a minute. When we were done crawling, we were going to start walking. It took us a minute. When we were done walking and we're going to run, took us a couple of times to figure that out. Same thing with riding a bike. But when you go back now, I haven't ridden a bike. I don't know about you, Rosie. I haven't ridden a bike in years, but I know that if I got back on one right now, I'd be just fine. So, you're going to, life is going to present you with these things, and you're just going to have to know that it's going to be okay. And failure is not necessarily a bad thing. We have put a connotation that's a horrible thing, and it's not.
Yeah, so failure is just a learning experience, right? And so the more it, and I think salespeople say after all the no's you get, however many no's, there's always a yes. So it's kind of the same thing with the fear of failure. You can feel afraid, but if you stop trying, you're just going to stay, stuck. Whereas if you keep going, even though you're going to fail, then you learn from that, and then you're eventually going to succeed in whatever it is that you're doing. Think of like you said, riding a bike or skateboarding or something like that. Olympians are the perfect example for that.
Yep.
Because
surfing, anything, yeah,
absolutely. Sports, they keep trying until they succeed in whatever it is that they're talking about.
Practice makes perfect, right?
Exactly.
So we also say it takes 7 touches for for the client to become the client needs to know, like, and trust. And those are the most important things. But it may take, it may not take that first encounter, a telephone call, coffee, or whatever, however it is that you approach your clients. It's going to be potential 7 touches. And they may need a newsletter or 2. They may need a follow-up call. It could be a text that you're following up with. And they need to know that they can trust you. And that takes a minute. That takes time. So be patient and don't be afraid of failing.
Right. And now, as far as, so you will know this show is about women in corporate. So tell me a little bit about how you would translate that fear of failure for women in corporate that are trying to advance in their corporate careers.
Yeah, right. Well, as women, we are kind of used to, having a little more difficulties than men, right? It's kind of well-known. It's a well-known thing that we have to try harder and lots of times to downplay, so as not to, downplay ourselves, our personalities, the way we look. We have to be very careful, and to be able to work in a corporate workplace and to sort of juggle, if you will. There's a little bit of a juggling game going on there, isn't there? Because you want people to like you, be personable, but not too much. Don't like me too much. You're always kind of just like this tightropey kind of situation and feeling. The most important thing that I think that you need to incorporate, to be reminded of and remind yourself of frequently, is that you are at the table because you deserve to be at the table. You've worked very hard to be at the table. Again, you deserve to be at the table. There are ways to put boundaries in place in a corporate workplace that are easy to do. I say it's with ease, joy, and glory. People think that putting boundaries in place means you have to be really stern and kind of angry and, really hard and very harsh, and you don't. You absolutely don't. You can say the same things. Again, I say with ease, joy, and glory, and I know women out there get me when I say it that way, that you can say it in a very kind way. Can I talk to you about that for a moment? Would you mind? Because what you just said there, I feel a little uncomfortable, and let me explain why. I don't want to call you out, but I do want to explain how it made me feel. In other words, don't put them too much on the defensive. Again, there's that tightrope, because you want to continue the relationship, unless, of course, it's something that is so overt and so blatant that then you have to call in HR. That's a whole different animal right there. That's probably another whole different podcast. But you can learn how to approach a corporate environment. And it's tough, especially for the younger girls when they're coming up through the ranks. I mean, they're working hard and they're doing all the right things and they're taking the courses, the classes, and bettering themselves. But at the same time, they don't want to irk anyone. They don't want to put anyone off. So again, very difficult. I understand, but at the same time, keep in the back of your mind at all times that you deserve to be there, or you probably wouldn't be there.
Right.
So that's, I think, extremely important. Know your worth, know your value, remind yourself of that, be firm and stern, and do it with a smile when at all possible.
Yeah. And I actually want to point out something that you probably didn't notice that you just did. But before I tell you what you just did, I saw a TikTok. This is a psychologist, and he was saying that in order to soften a message, if you're trying to say something, all you need to do is tilt your head a little bit. And when you were giving the example of what you said made me uncomfortable, you actually tilted your head at the same time. And I noticed that because I'm noticing those things now, and it just brings a softness to the conversation. Yes. And I don't know if you did that on purpose or if it's just like natural, but you did that.
I do think it's innate at this point because, I for years have been in media, which means I'm in many different contexts, whether I'm on stage or in front of a camera or I'm behind the scenes with the guy that puts a microphone on, whatever it is. I'm a communicator. So I've known from a very early age what communication is and how it works, just from life and life experiences, I think. One of the most important things I will add to this is to never lose your cool, to never get angry. And please don't be upset. Upset happens in HR. It may happen there. It cannot happen in front of your constituents. It cannot happen at the board table. It cannot happen in your cubby, your cubicle, your office with windows, whatever it is, wherever you are. And remember that if you are vying, if you will, for lack of a better word, if you are aiming is a better word for leadership, and in a leadership role, leadership starts with yourself in the mailroom. I don't care where you start, right? Or at lower corporate levels. Leadership starts with how you are acting and interacting with yourself and others. So it's the relationship that you are, by the way, also with boundaries, teaching others how you would like and would not like to be treated. So it starts very early on. You also will teach people what you will and will not accept every day of the week, every interaction you've got. Make sure that you are feeling, your value and validated. And you may not always feel validated in corporate, but definitely never forget your value.
Yeah. So you also say that there's this thing that you say you want to live high. Yes. What do you mean by that?
It's a fantastic acronym that I recently coined, and I want to live high. I want to live in a different, I want to be better tomorrow, Rosie, than I am today. And the way that I can do that is by living high. And that means living with honesty, radical honesty, integrity, with greatness and honor. And certainly that sounds very lofty, and it sounds like, who the heck does she think she is? And that's okay. I'm fine with all of that. But if we all came to the table with honesty, integrity, with greatness, and you can call it gratitude if you'd like, it's fine, or with honor, I think that we'd be able to really change the trajectory of our lives and those around us. If you're at the water cooler and somebody's trashing Susie Q, are you going to become a part? Are you going to start fomenting with the rest of the pack, that pack mentality, and say, you're right, she really is hot. She said to me the other day, oh, did you see that dress she was wearing? Whatever that is. Or are you going to walk up to that, listen to them and say, hey, you know what? I know Susie Q, and I don't know, that's not my experience of her. Maybe she was just having a bad day that day. Maybe she needed a hug or a little extra love. Or I'm not trying to be too woo-woo gals. I'm just trying to say, let's cut her a little slack, because I know when I'm in a bad mood, I'd wish you would do the same for me. And when you walk away, I think you're going to leave some jaws hanging, and people are going to go, wow, I don't know who she thinks she is on her uppity duppity horse, but I will also tell you that you're going to make them think. You will make them think. I've lost you just 1 second. My screen went out, but I will, people are going to, they're going to question themselves. They're going to question their integrity. I promise you that will happen.
Yeah.
And so you've left a bit of a lesson behind with you, haven't you? Which is extraordinary.
Sure. Now, when you say you want to, you want to stop into the power place, or your power place.
Right.
Now, obviously the acronym that you just said about the high, and we do not mean like marijuana high
None
at all.
of that. We mean honesty, integrity. We mean gratitude, and we mean honor.
Yeah.
When you're honoring yourself and honoring others, wow, what an amazing place to be.
Absolutely.
And again, we just did that, if you will, at the water cooler, right?
Yeah.
When you're living in gratitude, we hear that almost ad nauseum, to live in gratitude. But let me tell you, it makes great impact when you wake up every day. And I have on my refrigerator, I've got taped different mantras, different images, so that I'm constantly with reticular activating system. I'm constantly, I've got the input for the things that I know I'm striving for, should I ever forget. And definitely some of my affirmations, because affirmations are extremely, extremely important. Some people say they're not that important, but I'll tell you, when you continue to the repetitive process of anything, when you are worrying, you're praying for what you do not want. When you are using affirmations, it is a reminder, a constant reminder for what it is that you do want. And so I think it's an extraordinary exercise to keep in your life at all times. The other thing that I love to leave everyone with, and that they can remember is, we hear so much about, I am enough. I am enough. I am enough. And you are enough. And everybody's enough. And if you take a look at the definition of enough, it is as much as is required. Now, let that sink in for a second. As much as is required. Well, I don't know about you, Rosie, but I know about me, and I know that I am so much more than is required. I know that you are too. I know that the gals listening to us are. I know that we all want empowerment. We want betterment. We want improvement in our lives. And you're not going to be able to do that by doing as much as is required. I think you'll agree. So that's a really important part also that we talk about a lot also in my book, is that, enough is really not enough.
Got it. Okay. So tell me a little bit about when you step into your power place.
Power place. So I talk about standing strong in your stead. And that is when we know life is going to trigger us, when the hurricane comes through, that storm eventually. They come and they go, but you can always count on the next one. We hate to say it, but we do. It's just a part of life. But standing strong in your stead is something that is extremely important, because when the storm comes through, again, you may lose a leaf or two. You could potentially even lose a limb, but you're not going to be uprooted with the storm and transported away. And that's because you have all of the self-esteem tools in the shed that you need to be able to affront life with all of the strength, grace. Let's use glory again. Let's use all of the other words that we might want to muster up that will keep us sane, number one, and keep us moving forward again, wanting to be better tomorrow than we are today, notwithstanding what's just happened. I can give you probably 10 different things that have happened to me just in the last 2 years, and many of us, by the way, because we have just experienced the last pretty much the better part of the past 2.5 years with loss, right? Mm-hmm. So whether it be loss of friends, family, money, jobs, identity, loss of hope, loss of motivation, we could be here again with many words on the list, but there's been a sense of loss, not for all, but certainly for many. And the individuality, who am I not? How do I move forward? We're all worried, and we've gone through loss. So this is a perfect example of what COVID has done to change the trajectory of all of our lives. Were you standing strong in your stead? Did you know that tomorrow is another day? Did you see the light at the end of the tunnel? Did you remain completely motivated? Were you sitting down with your list and saying, if this, then that. If this happens, then this is how I'm going to pivot right. I may need to pivot left. Let me keep going. What was it that what you did? What tools did you pull out of that shed to use in these very trying times? And by the way, I might offer that I don't know that these trying times are necessarily over. Right. Not a doom and gloom message, but a message to say we are still in it. I don't know that, in this moment we are actually out of it yet, but notwithstanding, life is always going to throw a curveball. Let's get those tools in the shed that we absolutely need. And when I say that, I mean, what do we need to release? What do we got to let go of? And we hear that all the time, but have you done that work? Have you really done the work? Have you said, I need to release, that I don't think I'm good enough? Have you done the work then? Because that's a big one. That takes work. let's say, what do you need to rebuild? What are you rebuilding? What is it that what's that? What are you building? What is it that you're building? Here's another one, responsibility. These are, by the way, chapters in my book. Responsibility, Rosie. Where is it that we are? And where is it that we're taking responsibility, and where are we shirking responsibility? Knowing full well, for me, it's finances. Oh God, I hate numbers. I hate numbers. I hate accounting. I hate spreadsheets. I don't like charts. I can't stand accountants. I don't like contracts. I'm completely right-brained. So I'm sure many in corporate are more left-brained than I am. But, there are things that I know I shirk. If I don't have to, I will procrastinate. But I've really started to say, wait a minute, no, I got to learn a little more about it. And I might pull up a YouTube video, or I might find a book and learn more about the things that scare me. Money scares me. Losing money scares me. There are things that, so I've made a concerted effort to make sure that these are things that I fortify for myself.
Got it. Wow. Okay. So there is a lot of stuff that you there, but let's go to your book. So your book is called The Self-Esteem Regime. And tell me, why did you write this book?
Yeah. I started when I was younger, just watching, obviously we watch our moms, and mom was in a very toxic relationship. She was young. By the way, I was born in 59. So let's go back to women in 1959, fresh out of high school, got herself pregnant. Oh boy, here I am. She had no job. She married my father, and it was, 20 years worth of, not a happy place. And then she was a beautiful woman. Hated to have her picture taken. Oh, don't take my picture. Mom, you're beautiful. You're gorgeous. What's up with that? My grandmother, another beautiful lady, decides, she had to lose weight. Rosie, she didn't have to lose an ounce. Believe me when I tell you, she was gorgeous. My grandmother had to lose weight. She takes 2 diet pills, chokes on them, perforates her esophagus, spends the next 6 weeks in the hospital. And I thought, well, that was kind of silly, Grandma, but okay. Then I started, modeling and working with some of the most, beautiful creatures around the world. I mean, just lovely, lovely looking, physically beautiful women. And I could see even in them that there were not all, please, not all, but many of the girls were really not feeling good about themselves, and for many different reasons, right? I thought to myself, gee, what is it? What's going on here? Because my perception of these women is so much bigger, better, stronger, and bolder than their perception of themselves. And that kind of was a head scratcher for me. And I went, of course, silly me. It's the lack of happy, healthy self-esteem. And so as I progressed, I realized that there was really, and by the way that I, from the difficult childhood came kind of through, if you will, with bookstores. Now, back in the day, we had Walden Books and Border Books, and we had Barnes and Noble. We had bookstores there were no Amazon, but we had bookstores. And they used to be called self-help, and self-help had one, what do you call it? One bin, one, shelf.
Sure.
Right? 5, 6 shelves. That was just one. And that was self-help. That was all we had. But boy, did I devour it. It was really my go-to for kind of trying to unpack and break down what this thing called life was. And now if you walk into Barnes and Noble, it's called personal development.
Sure.
And it's massive. It's massive. I mean, it's $1 billion industry, self-improvement, self-esteem, self-help. And so I knew that that this book had to be written. It's something I've wanted to do for a while. I did a speech on stage, and the gentleman that co-wrote the book with me and others, I downloaded everything, and he put it into beautiful wording for me by the name of Gary Krebs. He said to me, I listened to your speech, I've got to write your book. And that's how it really started. And it was picked up by a New York City publisher. We're on Kindle, Audible as well. And in Barnes and Noble all across the United States, and in almost every library picked it up in the United States. So just that alone tells you that, there is always a great need for, first of all, for comfort. Secondly, to remind everyone about the courage that it takes to continue to forge on, and super especially for those that go the extra mile or want to talk about the longest mile. And that is always the mile that is pretty much you're alone. There's really not that many people walking beside you, if any. It's dark. and there's a storm coming through, and it's thundering and it's lightning, and then there's the big bad wolf behind the tree, and you have to keep walking, and you've got like no raincoat, no umbrella, and you just keep going, notwithstanding, because you know that you can see that little teeny light at the end of the tunnel, and as you keep walking and keep forging through, the light keeps getting bigger, better, bolder, and brighter. And you know, then these are the crowning moments that you can really pat yourself on the back for and say, I had naysayers, and by the way, I might have been one of them. I was probably my biggest naysayer. And so the book is written so that you are no longer, you are your own champion. You no longer are your own naysayer.
Got it. Okay. So I want to kind of equate this to, I'm sure you've heard of the Great Resignation, right?
Yes.
And so a lot of people have been saying, oh, all these people that quit their corporate jobs, they're just lazy. They don't want to work anymore, which is ridiculous to me. I feel that it's a lot of what you're saying. They realized that their job in corporate was not meeting their needs, whatever those needs are, whether it's, having to go take care of kids or loved ones or whatever, or they weren't fulfilled anymore. What is your view on the people that participated in the Great Resignation? I say good for them that they were able to find something else, but that may not be the case. So I'm curious to hear your opinion.
Well, let me just remind everybody that if you don't want to work a 9 to 5, be prepared to work 24/7.
Right.
And I don't say that to deter anyone, because I am a solopreneur, I am an entrepreneur. I've always worked from a home office, and I absolutely love it. I adore it. I will tell you, I've got a beautiful top on, but I got some pretty yucky shorts on right now that you can't see. But I do work, an inordinate amount of time. I work double time. Again, in my position, I'm not married. I don't have children, so it's a little bit of a different case scenario. But, no matter where you are, you're going to be working. What is the beauty of being an entrepreneur or solopreneur, however, is that it's on your own terms, and it's on your own time, and it's on your own dime. So you've got to take that into consideration as well. There is not always a guaranteed paycheck. So that's something you might want to consider. Certainly, Rosie, we could be here all day with the pros and the cons of both. But should you decide to leave corporate to work, to go home and work, know that it is still considered work. And it's funny that how the perception of others will change. Mm-hmm. In other words, everybody gets up and goes into the office every day. In my family, for example, my mother was in a car accident some weeks ago, and she's home right now. So it's funny how everyone thinks that because I'm home, I'm not working.
Right.
And I can certainly, go take care of her. And I do happily, by the way, don't get me wrong. That's not the point. But the point is now, I've got to take care of business here, which usually is about a 12 to 13 hour day. I will work that much. I'll get up real early and I work late. But now I have to integrate something else because I have the freedom to do that, whereas the others don't. Mm-hmm. So take those things into consideration as well. I'm going to say there, again, pros and cons to both, but never think that because you're not in a corporate environment that you're not going to be working your little tushy off, because you are.
Yeah, I agree. And, it's going to be different things for different people. Some people may, I think one thing that the pandemic did is it helped people evaluate the work that they were doing, their 9-to-5 job. And right. A lot of people found that wasn't fulfilling, and they found different ways of becoming fulfilled. So it kind of brings me back to your HI acronym, where, they want to live their life with integrity and with gratitude and with honesty. And at that time, they decided that a 9-to-5 job wasn't for them. So I think that applies to any kind of lifestyle.
And by the way, self-esteem at the end of the day is all about being happy. When I say happy, healthy self-esteem, it means you're doing what floats your boat. and you're doing it again with honesty, integrity, with gratitude, with greatness, with honor, all of these lovely words that I love to offer up. As long as you are doing what's making you happy, that is the end game. That is the end goal. And there's really very little wiggle room after that, isn't there?
Yes, there is. Now, when you say self-esteem, let's define it a little bit more for people. How do you get self-esteem? How do you acquire it? So what is it and how do you get it?
So self-esteem is it's how we value and perceive ourselves. Okay. It's based on kind of what kind of opinion have we formulated about ourselves in lieu of what we've heard, what we've been told, and what we've seen. Natal tribe. We've got a lot of stuff that happened when with the natal tribe, what we learned at home, right? May not necessarily serve us once we move out. Same thing happens with your educative process, where you went to school, what you learned, who you listened to, even today, the news, what you read, what are you garnering from yourself? And by the way, women, we've been going through lots of indoctrination, if you will, through media for years. You weren't thin enough, you weren't pretty enough, you weren't good enough, you weren't enough. You needed this to lose weight, you needed that to feel better. All this stuff that women know. Let's not even talk about the pink tax, but let's talk about the things that we have learned through media. And I know that I started out as a young girl. Thank God for Dove. The Self-Esteem Project did a lot of work around that. So let's talk about faith. A lot of times your faith, this is another way of learning, another ways they teach you. Certainly in the Catholic faith, there were a lot of things that I learned that was, you were a bad girl if you did certain things and you were taught, different. So what is it that you learned along the way that doesn't serve you? Right. So whatever it was that you were lost and you started to create these opinions and beliefs about yourself, and you have a difficulty thinking now that you're able to change, right? Because you're going to hurt somebody's feelings, somebody's nose is going to get out of joint, and that your truth is no longer their truth. So this is what I talk about, the courage part. It's the courage to stand up, to move on, to do what's right for you, and to live in your truth while not hurting anyone else or not wanting to hurt anyone else. Again, I touched upon a very difficult childhood. I'm not here to bash my parents. They did the best they could with the tools they had in the shed at the time. So for me, the toxic stops here. This is where I say, okay, I'm going to do the best I can to be a better person more than I am today. And so the self-esteem is really what you've learned, what you've garnered along the way that you have taken on as yours, that you have believed is your perception of yourself, and it may not be. So what we do with self-esteem, and what we certainly do with the book, is to reevaluate who you really are and how you can live it with your happy self-esteem for the person you are. And again, we call it, an action plan for becoming the confident person you were meant to be. And the key word being meant. You were meant to be something that you may not have learned. And that's a lot to unravel. That can be difficult for people.
Yes.
To learn.
So does your book then go through, so tell me like 3 or 4 chapter names, and does it go through each chapter to help people acquire that self-esteem?
Absolutely. Yeah, right. Absolutely. We go through the 12 chapters. And again, we start with, as I said to you, we start with release. What do we have to release? Second one is rebuild. Talk about all the rebuilding pieces, like from the ground up. Some of it is ground up work. Not all of it, but some of it. You will be taking a very deep dive. So again, let's get back to that courage part and knowing that this might be a book that you might have to put down a couple times, before you get through it, or you just keep on keeping on. It depends on how your comfort level. The next one is responsibility. We've touched upon that. Replace. What is it we have to replace in our lives? It could be relationships. And this, again, remember when I say these are really difficult things. It could be thoughts. It could be thought processes. It could be relationships. You may have to remember that extra mile I talked to you about. Sometimes the relationships in our lives that are not serving. And when I say serving, I mean they're not supporting us. Some of these relationships in our lives that we have found ourselves in can be rather toxic. How do we get out of toxic relationships? How do we reevaluate them? How do we put them in a different box, if you will, on the shelf, right? We take down boxes and we take a look at what we got in our lives. We put it back is it on a really, really high shelf, or is it one that's easily accessible? So, we've got to be really mindful of that as well. I do talk about mirror therapy, because one of the most important things you'll ever do is to talk to yourself in a mirror. And it sounds weird and it feels weird and it is uncomfortable. And you might want to bring a tissue. But when you start looking at yourself in the mirror, and I didn't invent this, by the way, I learned it along the way. It is some of the most empowering and impactful exercise. It is, to me, the most empowering and impactful exercise that you will ever do. When you start to tell yourself that you forgive yourself for whatever, or how much you love yourself, that you're there for yourself. So, Susie Q, I love you. I am here for you. I forgive you. Because, again, sometimes we think that, what we've done in the past is a life sentence. The mistakes that we've made, it's a life sentence, and it's not. It's just nothing more than a learning opportunity, right? So we can't always be down on ourselves about some of the mistakes we've made in the past. Move on. There's not much more we can do about that except work on ourselves today.
Oh my gosh, Clarissa, I have to tell you, that sounds fantastic, because like even the mirroring, like I got even a little emotional, because like picturing myself and like forgiving myself for whatever, whatever situation. So I think I want to bring to light that all of these things that Clarissa's talking about are obviously things that will impact both your personal life, but it will help you figure out why you're not advancing your career. Because if you're stuck somewhere, maybe some of these things that Clarissa's talking about is definitely going to be able to unlock something so that you can release it. I think that's one of the biggest chapters probably that are going to impact people, the releasing. And I love that it was your first chapter, because
we get right to it, Rosie. We get right down to the task at hand.
Okay, tell me a little bit more about the book.
So we move on from there. Obviously, the book we've got case studies in the book. We've got Clarissa's Corner. We've got the Clarion Call. There's a review. There's homework. So with the review, there's homework and affirmations in all. I don't know what chapter am I in. I'll let you know. Reinvent. So I will become the person I was always meant to be. These are affirmations. I will not settle for less than I deserve. I know that I deserve only the best for myself. I am not what others think of me. I was created for greatness and to inspire others. I'm excited about who I am becoming as I map out my future. I'm excited about, I just did that. I'm okay and say yes to getting up, moving on, and never looking back.
Wow.
I will do what is necessary to complete my reinvention and conquer the world.
I love that, Clarissa. That is phenomenal. Now, the book is pretty much at anywhere where you can purchase it, right? Barnes & Noble, yes. Amazon.
Barnes & Noble, yeah, and Amazon. Yeah, so Amazon, we've got an Amazon hard copy, Kindle, and Audible.
And you also said that libraries are across the country picked it up.
Absolutely. I was thrilled when I learned that. That was very exciting. That was straight up, like even before the book published.
Wow.
It was very exciting. So yeah, get your hands dirty. If you're stuck, and by the way, even if you're not, self-esteem is one of those things, Rosie, you can never take a test and get 100 on.
Right.
And it's one of those things you'll be working on all the time because of the triggers. And remember that you cannot. Self-esteem 101, number 101, stop comparing yourself to everybody else, because you are so lucky you get to be you. You are so lucky that you get to be you. Number 2, they call it self-esteem for a reason. So stop looking for the approval of everyone else. Mm-hmm. What everyone else thinks of you, Rosie, is none of your business.
Right. I agree. I love that. I love that. Oh my gosh, Clarissa. Well, this has been a fantastic conversation. And again, women in corporate are the perfect readers for this book, because when you work on your self-esteem, you are working on your career. Obviously you're going to have to do the work, and you're going to have to do some releasing, some forgiving, and some reinventing. And I think that's all fantastic. So Clarissa, before I let you go, I was wondering if you could give me, and obviously you've given us a ton of different, things that people can do, but can you provide me with maybe 2 tips that women in corporate can take away from everything that we've been discussing?
Absolutely. One of them is loyalty is when you've got my back behind my back. So remember that, as you're ascending a corporate ladder, right? I like to remind people that ascension is just as easy as your descension, right? You can come up a ladder, and next thing you know, you're right back down at the bottom rung. You don't know how it happens, but remember the loyalty piece. Remember the relationships that you will be creating. Remember how people remember how you treat them.
Yes.
And so, especially for those that want to be in leadership roles, that's really, really something to be mindful of, I think, on any given day. Don't ever forget anyone else as you are, becoming your better self, as you're becoming a leader. A leader means it's stepping into greatness, and it's not all about you. It's about those you're leading. So I think that's really very important. I love to leave you with that. And then, I've got so many of them. So the loyalty piece is a really big one for me. And the other one, what can I leave you with? I've got so many of them. I think one of the other ones that I love to say is, you can do anything. I can do anything. I can do anything. I can do anything. Well, you can do anything, Rosie, until you can't. By that, I mean, tomorrow is not always promised. So who is it that you need to be, picking up the phone and giving a ring to? Who is it that you need to ask forgiveness from? Who is it that you need, to send a card to? A thank you card goes such a long way. And I'm sorry is probably one of the most impactful and most powerful things you will ever utter. And that you are never too big or too important in anyone's life to be able to say, I'm sorry. If it is definitely needed. And sometimes even when it's not, an I'm sorry can go a very, very long way.
Yeah. And we're talking a genuine I'm sorry, not the I'm sorry.
Genuine I'm sorry. So, again, you can do anything until you can't.
Right.
Again, because tomorrow isn't promised. So remember that. Is it a friend? Is it family? Is it an ex? Is it a child? Is it a parent? Who is it? Who is it that you really need to pick up a phone call and kind of dust off old cobwebs and especially in these times with the pandemic where we were so separate from each other. That was unfortunate. But all right, well, Clarissa, this has been a wonderful conversation. You have left us with so much thinking to do, at least you have for me. So it has been an impactful, a positive, impactful conversation for myself. Now, before I let you go, any last words that you want to communicate? Yeah, I think that I would just, remember everybody about the acronym. Remembering also for women that, it's okay to cry. So, I often say Kleenex, clean up, and then go play dress up, just go have fun. Don't forget in all of this that life is supposed to be fun. We're supposed to be having a good time. Remember that. I think that's probably the most important thing I can impart as we say goodbye for now. And that is, remember, we're supposed to be having fun. So go play dress up.
That's incredible. All right, Clarissa. Well, thank you very much for your time. Again, this was a great conversation. And for those of you listening, all of Clarissa's contact information will be in my blog. So, all right. Thank you again, Clarissa. When I first spoke to Clarissa and invited her onto the podcast show, she said, "Don't worry, Rosie, I'll bring a lot of energy." And boy, did she completely over-deliver. Her energy was through the roof. Very much appreciated, Clarissa. So thank you again for coming onto the podcast show. Now, a few things that I took away from the episode is that it's really important for us to work on our self-esteem. Obviously, as women in corporate, there's so much negative self-talk that we're very good at, that we really need to stop and think about the thoughts that we're actually thinking. As she said, negativity begets negativity, positivity begets positivity. So if you are looking for a resource to help you figure out why you're not moving ahead in the corporate world, you might want to get her book. Again, her book is called The Self-Esteem Regime. And as she mentioned, it's pretty much in any bookstore, but also in public libraries as well. So look for it there. Okay. To recap Clarissa's 2 tips is tip number 1. She says, loyalty is when you got my back behind my back. So hopefully someone at work or in life has your back, even though you're not there. Specifically in corporate, this would be similar to you getting a sponsor, someone that is advocating for you, even if you're not there. Along with that, she says, build relationships. That's huge. We all know that. But more importantly, a relationship is how you make people feel is critically important. So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2 is you can do anything until you can't. And she says, tomorrow isn't always promised, which again, we all know. So today, who do you have to call and thank? Who do you have to call and ask for forgiveness? Say genuine and authentic, I'm sorry for something that, maybe went wrong. But take the time, even if it's 2 minutes, to call your parents, siblings, whomever, so that you can build and foster that relationship. So I think those are fantastic tips. So with that, all of Clarissa's contact information is going to be on the episode blog. You can find that on nowomanleftbehind.com. And with that, last thing is, remember to be brave, be bold, and take action.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Let these stories of self-encouragement and professional development serve as a guide in navigating through corporate America in the most practical and fulfilling way possible. Do not forget to subscribe to the show at nowomanleftbehind.com for more content like this. Leave a rating and share it with your friends, because we want to make sure that no woman is left behind. Until I see you next time, remember to be brave, be bold, and take action.